Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this podcast or this webinar. The focus of this webinar is about waste in Hong Kong, which is a much bigger issue than we have time for today. But we're going to focus a little bit more on plastic packaging and specifically on the packaging from beverages, because that's actually a proposal that the government is entertaining right now. And it is looking at something called a PRS, which is a producer responsibility scheme, which essentially means instead of the retailer selling you a product and then you're kind of stuck with it at the end and you have to figure out how to responsibly deal with it, this scheme tries to get the producers back into the conversation. It puts a little bit of skin in the game for them to also try to manufacture products that can be recycled and even contribute to the collection and recycling process. So we've got three great speakers here today. I'm going to moderate. My name is Davis Bookhart. I am the head of sustainability for HKUST, and I'm a part of the Division of Environment and Sustainability. And I'll introduce them a little bit more in just a second, but just in general, I'd like to say that we have two very distinguished professors, one from HKUST and one from Baptist University. And we also have a professional who's done a little bit of everything here in Hong Kong over the past 36 years or so, but we'll be speaking specifically about some policy recommendations for the government. So let me just start. I'll introduce them one by one as they'll give a presentation. Each presentation will be somewhere between 5 and 7 minutes so that we can get into some more discussions. As you're watching this, please take some notes. If you have some thoughts or some questions, write them into the question box, and we'll be able to take a look and we'll ask our guests if they can answer. So we're going to start with Paul Zimmerman. Very pleased to have Paul with us. Paul is the CEO of Designing Hong Kong. He's also an elected district councillor representing the Hong constituency, and a board member of Civic Exchange, Professional Commons, Hong Kong Democratic Foundation, and the Patient Care Foundation. Have any time for anything else?
Yeah, most.
Okay. His Hong Kong government advisory functions include the Harbourfront Commission. He has a master's in social science and economics from the Erasmus University in Rotterdam, and a Master of Arts in transport policy and planning from the University of Hong Kong. He arrived in Hong Kong in 1984, became a Chinese citizen in 2012. So let's get this started with Paul.
Thank you for having me here today. We Drink Without Waste is an alliance, and the reason I'm here is because they elected me chairman in 2017, and they've never let me go as chairman. So. And the alliance includes now pretty much all the large brands that sell products here in drinks, beverages here in the market. So we basically got 70-80% of the drinks sold here represented in the group. We got the retail chains, so other than except for the very small ones, we got the retail represented. Waste and recycling companies, large institution, NTR, and the airport are in. And then quite a number of NGOs are represented in the group. And we've been together since 2017 to kind of agree on how to reduce waste from our beverage consumption. And we've set ourselves a very ambitious target that by 2025, 70% of that waste is going to be recovered. So we reduce the waste of our beverage consumption dramatically. That's the plan. Now, it was easy in the first year to agree strategy. Strategy is kind of like playing Monopoly because there's not real money at that stage. So it took a year to agree on what we want to do. And these are the 4 strategies. One is to reduce and to install beverage dispensers and promote bring your own bottle. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we've lost a lot of from what we had intended to do here, and because there was a lot of concern about hygiene related to these beverage dispensers. But we're hoping to get that back on track. Then the second one is to redesign and to make sure that packaging standards are recyclable, are made of recycling materials and so on. So that's the whole redesign strategy. Then to recover, make sure that there is a convenient collection network for people to return the beverage packaging, to make sure there's some value available for people. So we were very early out there promoting the government to set up a producer responsibility scheme. And the fourth strategy is to build recycling facilities. We had no real good quality recycling facilities for these materials. So under construction and to open up softly in about a month's time, and formally probably in September, is a PET ATP factory that can handle a majority of the beverage bottles. There is some other facilities that are being scheduled. We have been told by these various owners to compete with them. And then there is somebody who's operating a liquid carton processing plant. So we have these recycling facilities, they're growing, and we're trying to drive that further. So we're really happy that government has come out and is going to the community to ask whether they support a PRS, whereby basically there is value put on that empty beverage container, that if you return it, you get your money back. And in that way, we can make a system that make sure the packaging comes back. And the PRS puts the responsibility on the producer to make sure that it happens. So we're very happy with that, because there's so many things that have fallen by the wayside. The kind of municipal solid waste charting has been delayed. But the plastic bags second phase scheme has been delayed. We're very happy that because we have our group, government felt comfortable to move ahead with this plastic beverage container plan. Now, a few things where we still have, we support it. I mean, fantastic. We want government to do it as soon as possible. We need a level playing field so we can actually operate these fantastic ideas we have of making sure we get the 70% back. But there are a few differences. Just on the chart here, from a managed scheme management point of view, the government thinks that they're going to manage it themselves. We're suggesting to have a packaging exchange and not-for-profit organization, a bus company, as I call it, to operate it rather than government. So you have greater flexibility. Governance at government, we propose there is a non-executive board with a wider variety of people involved, and that they say the advisory council on the environment is involved to kind of like be the advisory council, especially on issues like, what's the levy next year? Are you meeting the recovery targets? Is there a new packaging material? What should be the recovery target? By when should that be effective? Because sometimes you may need time for recycling facilities to come up and running. So there are some differences there, not dramatic. The more bigger the differences is here that government suggests to only do the plastic beverage containers. We entirely disagree with that, because what will happen is that if a drink is packaged in a plastic bottle, the consumer price will go up by whatever the value is that it goes up with. It could be $1 up, or as government suggests in their consultation, it could go up by 65 cents. However, if it's packed in a pouch, which is completely non-recyclable, it doesn't have that extra cost. So you have a great risk of shift. Now, shifting production line facilities for stuff that's been made in Hong Kong is not so easy. Take time to replace machinery, but we got 40% import, and import can change overnight. It's easy. You can find water packed in liquid cartons. You can find water packed in metal cans, in plastic bottles. I mean, you can shift as an importer very quickly to the one that you think you're going to have a better price in the market with. Return networks. The government is very intent on having these RVMs. We believe that we got to work on building out what we already have, which is the cleaning companies, the property managers who have all of these schemes in place where, as part of they separate out from the waste, they separate out recyclables. Right now, they separate out metal, they separate out paper, but not the plastics. If we can get them to separate out the plastic bottles first, by putting some value on it and develop that plastics capacity and the trust that plastics have value, then we can see that as a pathway to get them to separate out all plastics. So we believe that it's a great way to move forward. If you do RVMs, you can only do the plastic bottle. You can't put a plastic bag in there or a styrofoam or another item. So RVMs have a limited opportunity. I'm not saying that there's no role for them. I'm just saying we shouldn't be reliant on them. And then the one that has caused the greatest amount of discussion so far is, what is that rebate value? Government says 10 cents. We say start with 5 cents because we've seen that it's already working and it stays close to the value of the product. In fact, whether 5 cents or 10 cents, it's fine. But we do not like to see a start at 50 cents. Mm-hmm. Then the gap between the value that's on it and the actual material value is so great that the incentive for fraud is enormous. When the incentive for fraud is there, you have to defend against it. The only way to really defend against it is by having a complete RVM network. Only with machinery to make sure that when the bottle goes in, it gets immediately compressed, built, and you can secure it, and it doesn't get recycled again and again to pick up the money. And also, we have to defend against bottles being made just across the border, coming over at night to Lao Fao Shan. So we have, and that is expensive to do, which then is going to be on the consumer that ultimately pays for that. It's going to impact the drink prices. And it also reduces convenience. You don't have to find those RVMs. So the penalty becomes high for the consumer. We are in the position that we say we like to start low and then build up slowly, but for government to really set a target. Some of my friends at the green groups who are also part of our discussion, they suggest, no, let's start at 50 cents and take it from there, but don't go below it because let's just get an absolute return from the consumer. Let's make sure they will definitely come back. So that's where we are with Drink Without Waste. Government consultation, May 21 is the midnight, is the last moment. So please all support and go to the government website, www.pprs.hk, and fill out the forms at the back and give your support for government. Just let them go ahead with this as soon as possible. These changes where we can have a lot of discussion of how to implement, we can sort out over time in the next year as legislation gets drafted. But let's at least give government full encouragement to go and move ahead as soon as possible. So just very briefly, we've done some comparison here. The status quo is 0 and no impact on the consumer price. So the second last column is price of the drink. We're suggesting around 5 cents. We believe that the operation of the scheme is about 20 cents. It will be 25 cents on top of the drink cost of the drink. Government says 10 cents deposit. They estimate the operational cost between 40 and 55 cents. So the up on the drink price is about 50 to 65 cents. So $8.65 for a drink. Some of the other people, other groups who are suggesting a much larger incentive, we believe that from other overseas schemes and so on, that you don't start to have an operational cost to operate 4,000 RVMs around town, around 75 cents to $1. So then, you're going to be close to $2 up on the cost of a drink. So we've got to keep that perspective. These numbers are still on the estimate side, but it's indicative of what we've got to think about as we go forward. We've done some consumer research. If we give people confidence, they will recycle. And so 40% of people say, like, I just don't trust the bins outside. I'm not recycling. It's too inconvenient. Mm-hmm. So if you solve that, I will recycle. Then we have some people saying, like, if you give me some money, then we'll come back. They come back. And then if you give you more money, then it kind of levels off. So we believe it's highly efficient if we stay in the lower quadrant in terms of how much money we give. We don't have to start at $1. We can start and then move up to meet our targets. So voluntary recovery schemes are currently underway by various brands. So we have these RVMs installed that and the boxes for liquid cartons to be returned. So we're learning what works and what doesn't work and what the challenges are. So that's very good information. And we're running a neighborhood scheme where at this moment through the recycling fund funding, we give 5 cents to the person who brings back a plastic bottle. And from the numbers that we have seen in the first 6 months, the absolute majority comes from cleaning companies. Mm-hmm. Cleaners who work for cleaning companies and buildings, they can really drive volume because they enable the consumers to keep it to keep it separate and encourage them to keep it separate. And then we'll get it to that point where it gets consolidated, and we see a very, very quick pickup. It is not it's not the scavenger, it's not the informal collector, it's the cleaner that really contributes to this. And it does fantastic in housing estates where there is ample space to set up a facility for people to bring it back. So that's what we learn. And anybody can join us by very simple, keep your drink packaging separate. Don't throw it in the general waste, and make sure it gets recycled. I mean, that's the basic that every consumer can do. Just don't dump it in the waste bin. Keep it separate. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. That was great. Well, it was also a really good kind of an explanation of the externality. This is really an externality issue, because there's no value to take it back, right? It's kind of outside of the economic system. And so, there's different ways of trying to bring that back in and internalize those costs. And this is one way. So thanks for that. That was actually a nice kind of an economics lesson on how to do your pricing right with your consumer surveys.
We're trying to.
Your sensitivity analysis, we could talk about.
Well, I mean, you just got to get in the market and doing it, and then you feel what works, and then you have to move forward. So I think key is to set the target of what you want to achieve, and then manipulate convenience, manipulate pricing, and then move forward, trying to find the sweet spot.
Right. All right. Well, lots to talk about. We're going to next go to Shan Chung, and but I know some of these issues will come back when we get back into our discussion. Because one thing that you pointed out as well is that it's not just about recycling; it's about confidence in recycling, and that is quite
convenience.
And convenience, right? If you have to walk past 300 waste bins just to get to the one recycling bin, at some point you're just going to toss it in. All right. So next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Shan Chung. She is the senior lecturer of the biology department in Hong Kong Baptist University. And she's also the director of Master of Science in Environmental and Public Health Management program, and the convener of the task force on campus sustainability at the Hong Kong Baptist University. Dr. Chung has been involved in the area of waste and environmental management of Hong Kong for almost 30 years and been directly involved in many local and regional government commissioned environmental and waste consultancy studies. Her research has been focused on waste and environmental management of mainland China and Hong Kong, and waste management, recycling behavior, pharmaceutical waste, e-waste, specific areas of her research interest. She also has research experience in scuba diving and ecotourism, so maybe that will come up as well. She won the Faculty Performance Award in Individual Teaching and Team Teaching in 2018 and 19 and 19 and 20. Respectfully, I didn't know that, Shan, but doesn't surprise me. You're a great speaker, and we're really pleased to have you join us today. So without further ado, why don't you take it away?
Good to see you all. And since I have an exam to invigilate in the evening, so I won't be able to physically go over to join you guys. But the advantage of being in my office is that I don't have to wear a mask. So good to be able to breathe freely and to speak. Now, Paul has already talked about a few features of the PPRS, that is the government consultation of post PRS scheme on plastic packaging. So I'm not going to repeat what Paul has said, but I would like to remind the audience that it's not everything government led. Well, it's government led, but it's not everything controlled and done by the government in the PPRS, especially when we look at the consultation documents. This RSA and also the operators, they will be invited to join by open tender. So I'm sure that there will be scope for participation from the private sector or even NGOs in that regard. Although the extent of control is not entirely clear, just based on the consultation documents. Now, I gather that there are 5 key attributes of the PPRS. Out of the 5, I have no adverse comments, and basically I agree with the first 2, so I'm not going to spend time on that. There are three more that I do have a non-straightforward answer or response to them. The first one is already set by Paul, that the government proposed only plastic beverage bottles will be covered, and it will exclude pouches, Tetra Pak, and even, of course, not in this scheme, but in another scheme, there's the glass beverage bottles that are already covered by the other scheme, but there's another story there. So I agree with Paul that unless everything is covered, all the closed substitutes of plastic beverage bottles are covered, you are just encouraging them, the beverage manufacturers, to shift from the higher cost, more expensive types of packaging to the lower cost one, which may not be may even be worse than plastic beverage bottles. To start with. So if the government insists on just covering the plastic beverage bottles, I have reasons to believe that the upcoming PPRS in its current form will not be very effective in delivering a low waste society. All right, I'm not talking about so grand things such as circular economy yet. I will leave it to Benjamin. And just a point of information, or to remind all those that who may have already forgotten that in 2013, our government proposed the glass beverage bottles PRS. In 2016, our Legislative Council has approved this bill, but as of today, this PRS has not yet entered into force. Now, I don't know if anyone here is of good enough memory to remember how much is the recycling fee or the redemption value or the deposit. It's not actually a deposit, right, and refund, but a charge put on each glass beverage bottles, right, is $1 per 1 liter container. For an average glass beverage bottles, the government at that time was giving us an indicative value of 75 cents Hong Kong dollar. All right, so is a figure that I think we should bear in mind when we are having this discussion. Now, the second is about the redemption value. The third is about the redemption value, but I will not talk about the redemption value yet. The second is about the form of control. Now, whether this PRS should take the form of having a redemption value only or a deposit refund scheme. Now, Paul, obviously, his baby is to have just the redemption value. But there are also many other green groups who says that we should have a deposit refund system. Now, I'm not that dogmatic, and I don't want to judge by which system is better, but I look at relevant criterion. Okay, the first criterion is whether it's cost effective. Now, Paul has already talked about the high cost that can be induced with higher redemption value and also a deposit refund system. He has also presented some figures, but what does the government do? Well, the government proposed a redemption value system, but it presents no figure and no arguments for the alternative, which I think is not a very transparent, not a very informative, and not a very sincere type of consultation. And other criteria that I will use is whether it is collection efficient. Can it maximize collecting back the waste materials, be it all the beverage bottles or just plastic beverage bottles? So first, I have talked about the first point. There's no figures from the government, and I would like to see that so that we are convinced that they are right. And secondly, for those supporters of the deposit refund system, they would argue that, okay, having a deposit refund system is more educational because the deposit and the refund reminds every consumer that it is their duty to recycle. Now, I agree with that, but I also have to caution the supporters of the deposit refund scheme that this type of educational value is likely to be marginal at best. Because I envisage that other than the 41% that Paul has presented, who will recycle in no matter what, all the other 60% or so of the general public, they will look at the size of the redemption value or the size of the refund to decide whether or not it's worth their time cost to recycle. All right. So only the die-hearted, committed 41% will recycle whatever and whenever. So the marginal redemption, the marginal increase in educational value actually depends on the other question, the third questions that I'm going to discuss later. But theoretically, I will say that my view is that the deposit refund system is less flexible. Less flexible in what sense? Now, here is a bottle, right? You can see this bottle. And this bottle, I don't know where it is from Hong Kong. I just picked it up from home. I don't know where is it from. It says something like it's from Canada. Now, I don't know if it is on sale in Hong Kong, but don't forget that, well, because now it's COVID, but when everything is back to normal, and I hope, fingers crossed, that we eventually will, hopefully in less than 1 year time, there will be bottles that are not registered in the deposit refund system to appear in our market, either brought into companies commercially or by private individual tourists. Not to mention that we are nowadays talking about a lot of plastic waste in the ocean. Now we have the responsibility to collect all those floating refuse back. So the majority of them are plastic, and a certain proportion, I think a substantial proportion of them are actually packaging materials and plastic packaging materials. So how are we going to deal with that? All right. If we only have the deposit refund system, all those marine waste, even though they are perfectly fine PET bottles, we cannot recycle through this means. And that means what? That means they can only become scrap with very low values. And I don't think they will eventually get recycled. So from the point of view of material reuse, maximizing material recycling and reuse, that is including collection efficiency, I don't think the deposit refund system performs very good in that aspect. So the third aspect that I do have a non-straightforward response is about the redemption value. Now, basically, I won't argue how much, whether it should be 15 cents or 10 cents or 5 cents or whatsoever. Basically, there are just two different approaches to set this redemption value. Either we use approach one, which is to set the redemption value at an incentive level. Incentive to mean what? Incentive so at a high enough level so that the beverage products become expensive enough to reduce consumption, so that the consumers feel that, oh, it's really pinching my pocket. So they will reduce consumption. This is source reduction. This is exactly what green groups want, isn't it? But at the same time, because of the very high return value, whether it's in the form of redemption value or refund, this high value will also drive up the return rate, right? Likely maybe can be driven up to 90 or 95%. That would be the more ideal targets. So this is the first approach of setting the refund or redemption value at an incentive level. And the second approach is what Paul has said, start at a low level, get us to have a foot in the door first, all right? But in order to make sure that there is enough recycling, we should set a challenging enough recycling targets and let these targets be an obligatory statutory targets that the beverage manufacturers have to comply, so that if they cannot comply, they will automatically adjust up their redemption value. All right. So this, I don't disagree. Honestly, I don't disagree. But other than having statutory recycling targets, for one, I would like it to be even more aggressive. 95% at the end. Finally, it has to reach 95% in order to be satisfactory. And at the same time, there should be deterrent penalty for non-compliance. Now, without that, I don't think there is any teeth in this statutory recycling targets. And I do hope that whichever the approach is, all types of beverage packaging will be included. But of course, it's much easier to use a redemption value approach to be more inclusive than the deposit refund system. And taking into consideration that not every citizen is a committed recycler, I actually think that it's a good idea to place drop boxes for those who do not mind dropping the boxes. They have the empty bottles, but they feel that is too time cost wise expensive for them to sell, to gather them and redeem the bottles. Then they can use the drop boxes and leave it as that extra income for the cleaners in the housing estates, for those informal waste collectors to finish the recycling process for them. And then they have the incentive to do so, right? I'm a steering committee member of Paul's beverage bottle take-back scheme. And there are people who don't mind, who is doing that. They are doing a good job. And recovery rate is actually quite high. Recovery volume is actually quite good. Now, there's one more thing that the government's documents, and neither is Paul mentioning, but I think it's very important, and it is also answering one of the questions that David has said to us, that can a PRS change the supply system? Well, the PRS cannot fundamentally change the supply system to make it environmentally friendly, so we have to do something additional. And this additional measure is to impose an additional refillable beverage container targets on the beverage manufacturers. Because this is finally, at the end, what we want them to do. We don't want them to, okay, because it's recycling at a high rate, let's keep producing or using the one-off bottles, producing a lot of recyclable materials. But that's not what we want. We want them to change the packaging form fundamentally from one-off to reusable, as durable as possible, isn't it? So let us just tell them very clearly that this is your target, right? And the targets that I want, I think that should be, is very aggressive, 90% in 10 years' time, all right? So I think it's doable if the government has the political will. So this is a very schematic comparison of the two approaches. So what you can see is that on the environmental front, approach one seems to score higher, but with my additional proposals, for example, having a refillable beverage bottle packaging targets in 10 years' time, then the performance of approach 2 can actually improve. And the major difference between approach 1 and approach 2 is its impact on the beverage industry. Now, the beverage industry would definitely don't like approach 1. It's driving them dead, right? But it's more acceptable to have approach 2. So let us use approach 2 so that everyone is quite happy to start with. And increasingly, we give them more obligations to make them more responsible, more environmentally responsible companies. Now, this is my last point is my unique contribution, I would say, because I've been teaching food safety law here in Hong Kong Baptist University for 10 years, actually more than 10 years. And I'm very disappointed to see that in Hong Kong, our food safety law has no connection with the environment, with our environmental need. For example, in EU, they have tolerable daily intake targets for phenols, bisphenol A's, phthalates, not yet microplastics as far as I know. But in Hong Kong, we have none. We have the harmful substances in food regulations, but in view of the possibilities of a lot of food contact harmful substances that may go into our water or our beverage or our food, our government has been relying on a very generic protection on food safety for us, which is very unsatisfactory. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because in order to make the scrap, plastic scrap, valuable, we have to use them. So if you use them, where are we going to use it? And there is the arguments that we should close the loop or recycle bottles into bottles. Now, I don't object to that, but on the other hand, we should ensure that those waters, if I actually don't use bottled water a lot at all. But for those who regularly drink bottled water, we have to ensure that health risk is within acceptable limits. So having them especially those possible harmful substances that could appear in bottled water, bottled beverages, is very important that we have the limits set explicitly on them, so that the general public will not face unnecessary involuntary health risk, and not at the expense of using more recycled plastics in particular. So at the end, I would like to conclude that in order for us to become a low-waste, low-carbon society, we need three big elements. We need a sensible scope of control and good enforcement, and to this, the government in Hong Kong is very weak. In particular, when you are looking at two consultation or two PRS together, in the plastic beverage bottles, they are talking about 10 cents per bottle. But in the glass beverage bottles, they are talking about 75 cents per bottle. So what does that mean? There's a clear message. The government wants those the manufacturers, the beverage manufacturers that are currently using glass to turn to plastic because that's the lower cost when both schemes come into force. Well, is this what we want? Sorry, I don't think this is what we want. All right, our government simply don't have the sense to have a sensible scope of control. About good enforcement, I hope that in the future they will. The other two elements, they are about the general public and about the business. We should all be promoting or trying our best to educate ourselves to raise our own waste ethics. So that's all I would like to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Chan. Terrific, really good stuff in there. A little bit longer than our 7 minutes that we agreed on, but that's okay. It was well worth every minute of it. All right, so we're going to get a little squeeze for time, but a lot of the things that you brought up, we're going to continue to talk about, but I want to make sure that Benjamin has plenty of time for his thoughts, and then we can get into a really good discussion. You really teed up some good issues that we can come up with, and I know that you will as well. So without further ado, let me introduce Professor Benjamin Steuer. He's an assistant professor right here at HKUST. Benjamin joined the Division of Environment and Sustainability, HKUST, in 2019. With a background in Chinese studies, political economy, and waste management, Benjamin has been working on China's circular economy for over 10 years. And during this time, he participated in and led more than a dozen research projects on recycling, e-waste, plastics, and end-of-life vessels and household waste recyclables in China. His papers published in Resources, Conservation and Recycling and Waste Management. Benjamin pursues an interdisciplinary approach, combining firsthand quantitative and qualitative data from the field research surveys with models of the evolutionary institutional economics. All right, so without further ado, Benjamin, take it away.
Thanks a lot, David. Thanks a lot to my speakers who came before, I would say wonderful presentations. So given that so much interesting thought has been shared, I will try to confine my my presentation to rather some more hypothetical elaborations. So what am I going to talk about? It's plastics in the circular economy. And if you think about Hong Kong, I mean, being engaged here for some time, I would say some fundamental key questions are coming up when I teach that to my students when I speak about it. So do we know when we handle plastics what we are doing? I mean, do we know what we do when we consume plastic beverage, a product that comes in a plastic beverage? Secondly, do we think we pay the appropriate price for what we consume? Is that adequate? Of course, linked to that, the question is, I mean, we're talking about financial mechanisms, we're talking about a waste discharging scheme. Is that really feasible to induce some type of circular economy? And finally, particularly focusing on Hong Kong with a bit of a projection, what would be a possible future with the circular economy in plastics? Is there one at all? Actually, this is something, especially I think, sometimes presentation brought up. No? So, in first instance, do we know what we are doing? What do I mean by that? I mean, what we see is essentially what we buy, right? We consume certain products, and then we get rid of those. We discard them, and this is rather unpleasant. I think everybody would agree. It doesn't matter where you live. But what we actually don't see is what we really create when indulging in the consumption of plastic. Now, this sounds a bit philosophical, maybe a bit challenging, but I don't think that most of us think about if you use a PET bottle that needs to be extracted, right? Oil needs to be extracted. There are emissions in the production of it, emissions in the transport of it. And in the end, if it is not discarded properly, where does it end up? On the right-hand side, and the lower on the upper right-hand side, you see something rather unpleasant from Lama Island here in Hong Kong. There is an NGO called Living Lama that has been collecting beach marine litter, so marine litter waste that enters across grounded shores, and you see that there is quite a lot. Look at this figure on the top right. You see there were, I think it's about nearly 3 tons that they collect in a year. This was 2020 with limited movability, and most of it is plastic. Now, on this basis, the question is, of course, are we paying the proper price? No, we don't. I mean, the response is very simple. No, that what we pay for a bottle of any kind of beverage, right, plastic, is very different. This price excludes the cost that actually is generated in terms of an impact on the environment. We talked about externalities, right? Negative externalities. These are these kind of unintended costs of environmental destruction. Why cost? Again, it's very difficult to measure destruction. So environmental economists would say, okay, let's go for costs. Now, if you look at 1 to 5, right, the different processes of the life cycle and the recycling process, that's all costs. This costs a lot of money. And what we pay at the moment is not enough. It's simply not enough. I'm sorry to say that it's not pleasant. Nobody wants to pay more, as he already does, especially those with less affluent people, right? But we have an ethical obligation. You have to adhere to this kind of polluter pays principle. Be responsibility, take the responsibility. The waste charging scheme, the PRS, however, well, problematic in this commodity. It is something that we have to face, that we have to engage in. I'm sorry, that's a very simple truth. Now, why do I want to speak about the circular economy in this context? It is a concept that is still in the making. It's not that old. It has, of course, certain predecessors, but essentially, the idea is to reduce the inputs of raw materials that we need in the economy, reduce the negative outputs, right? That is waste, materials that have no value anymore, and ideally keep what we use within a certain loop. That means once the product is used, it will be recycled, right? We think about redesigning certain products, using less materials. We think about what can be reused, repair, remanufacture, and what can we actually try to prevent to kick it out of that daily economic cycle. Now, in regard to these financial mechanisms, can they work? The PRS, for example, can it work to induce a circular economy? There are debates on that, clearly. Theoretically, and as has been proven, at least in the European Union, the first instance is that in the short term, something like recycling can be achieved. What you see here on the upper right-hand side is a table sort of summarizing all viable circular economy practices or principles. And it starts at refuse, right, rejecting materials because you know they're not good, and ends up with energy recovery. As you can see on the left-hand side, the lower this strategy is ranked, for example, R8, R9, the closer we come to linear economy, the closer we come to an undesirable mode of managing our economy. At the more higher level, something like diffuse, rethink, reduce, also reuse, we are entering something like the circular economy. And the PRS might, on the long term, and I might contradict a bit, Professor Chung San might actually realize something like reduction or also diffuse. Why is that, or how do I see it? Well, if I look a bit into the future of packaging plastics in Hong Kong, the currently predominant pattern is still that something is produced, right? It's put on the market in Hong Kong, it's consumed, and unfortunately ends at the land. Now, the PRS would take the first step if implemented properly, and Dr. Zhong and you have outlined very clearly that there are certain conditions to be met to make the one function properly. But it would initiate this process of getting less dependent on landfills, right? Trying to gradually scale those out. And that materials like the beverage packaging, they would be returned to recyclers, so recycler treats them and, of course, transfers these secondary raw materials to a producer or a manufacturer. On the long term, we have to think quite differently. So I'm a big fan, you said this, I do a bit of evolution. What is evolution? Simply means to look into how systems can change without an overarching agenda, without somebody who's controlling the whole system. But if you look into the future, if you think that, and if you see that people in general get more aware about environmental issues, we have a PRS system in place. What comes up is that not only landfills should be totally abandoned and they should not be used anymore, but also manufacturing the traditional type of products that we have, like food and plastics, they should vanish. So ideally, after consumption, a product would be returned to recycler. The recycler would be in cooperation with a sustainable producer, however you want to frame that. And the sustainable producer generate something, create something more durable, more usable good. Also, if it is a beverage packaging. Now, the big question, of course, here is who are the losers and what does it mean for Hong Kong? Just to finish here, if this pattern changes in that direction, not only manufacturers, as you know, traditionally work at the moment, would see a big conflict of interest, but also the recyclers, because what they handle at the moment is something they know comparatively well. It's plastics. If the beverage packaging is changing biodegradable polymers, for example, right? What will recyclers do? Of course, they can change the services, but it will be a challenge for them. So it's definitely not an easy way, but just in summarizing that, I would say, yes, we need something like a system that enforces responsibility and that is costly. It's not pleasant, but it is necessary. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Benjamin. All right, so that's our starting point. It's not pleasant, but it's necessary. So very good. But I think that so what I'm excited about this conversation is that we're avoiding some of the things that have been traditional conversation pieces in the past. If we were having this conversation even just a couple of years ago, the whole conversation would be about we've got to educate the consumer to recycle more. You know, the consumer doesn't know what they're doing. We just need more education. I think we've evolved past that. We recognize this is really a systemic problem. So yeah, so that's number one. I think that this is really great.
The consumer is also good. I mean, the consumer wants to recycle it.
They do.
There is a real good and positive attitude in the community about wanting to do it. But they want to be enabled. They want to have help to make sure they can do the right thing.
I think that's absolutely right. Survey after survey that we have here on the campus, people always tell us, of course, I know how to recycle. Don't tell me I don't know what recycling is. Everyone knows
Where's the bin?
But where's the bin, right? I'm not going to walk an extra 100 yards and down the stairs and everything. So you got to make it convenient. I do want to, well, I've got so many questions for us, but one thing that I'd just love to get all three of your comments on is really about this idea of producer responsibility, because we focus so much on the end user. You're the one who gets the bottle. You have to figure out what to do with it. If you don't, I mean, think about what we say to people. We say, recycle to save the planet. We don't say, producer, stop making stuff that destroys the planet. The burden is always on the end consumer. They're the ones that get stuck with the trash. There's no easy way for them to do it. They get blamed if they don't do the environmentally responsible way. So this whole conversation is about producer responsibility. So a cynic would say this isn't really producer responsibility. You're just passing on a cost straight to the consumer. So what is the producer's responsibility, and how are they kind of feeling like they are part of the solution as well?
Are you like me to start? I mean, we have been pestering the producers, say 7-8 years ago, a lot with photographs of their brand bottles on the beach. We had a brand on the beach campaign, cleaning up a beach and sending the photographs to the Coca-Colas or the Vita. So I say, those are your bottles on the beach. You know, what are you going to do about it?
Come back and get
it. So, and I must say, it's part of that the producers were keen to participate in Drink Without Waste, because we approached them for research and so on. And they said, well, if you just come to me and the other one is not participating, we're not going to get anywhere. So they were very keen that there was going to be a solution. So I must say, in that sense, very good that and the three local companies, so Swire, A.S. Watson's, and Vitastar, I must say they've been really proactive to make sure they're part of it. And I must say the pictures of dead fish and birds with plastic in them has helped a lot to make sure everybody stays really focused on the issue. So I think in that sense we got industry participating. Of course, they know it's coming down the line, and so they want to be ahead of it by making sure that they're part of that discussion, so that how it shapes up and how the solutions fall into place is something that is a good system that works for them as well as everybody else. So I think in that sense it is good. We have that attitude in town. But yeah, the producer responsibility in this case. There is cost in once you start doing this and you do the circular economy, it's going to be more expensive. You've got to get the materials back, reprocessing them. There is a net cost in that extra vehicle, in the reverse logistics.
Right. Is there any suggestion that the recycled plastic will be going back into
absolutely
their specific?
Oh, absolutely. The whole idea is that by sending I'm not sure whether you remember, we had these 4 strategies. Yeah. And so the redesign strategy is definitely includes the use of recycled materials to produce these.
Recycled.
Yeah, so you can have a full circular setup. But there is an additional cost. And that cost, yeah, absolutely, in the end, competitive markets is ending up in the cost of the product. Because so if you are drinking packaged goods, drinks from the packaged product, you're going to have the extra cost to deal with the fact that packaging and the externalities of the packaging are going to be reflected, and that will bear upon both consumers and the producer. But it's the producer responsibility to make sure that it's organized. They cannot walk away and say, "Well, it's not my responsibility. Leave it up to government." So no, they got to be part of that responsibility. Make sure that they organized. So when it comes to issues like, and since then there was a good one on the deposit. Actually, the industry is not objecting at all to the deposit. The only reason that at this moment in Hong Kong we are not supporting deposit is because we don't have GST and VAT system. The small retailers are not used to that level of administration. But from a financial impact or organizational impact or scheme impact, actually, like the deposit scheme is very straightforward. Actually, for producers, it's good because under the value return, the money that's paid back is prepaid by the industry. So it's several weeks ahead, and it's on them to prepay it. Where on the deposit scheme, that is from the consumer. When the consumer buys it, then they put the money in for the deposit, and then it comes back. So there's a financial advantage for the deposit scheme that weighs towards the producer. So the real issue for Hong Kong is that the value return is easier to implement in the absence of good administration of the retail sector, because we never had a GST. So we have a very lightweight obligation in terms of administration and reporting to government. So that's the most crucial aspect. We're not opposing to deposit at all.
Let me just throw one thing out there too, because you reminded us that there's the government survey, and you said it's the www.pprs.
Yeah.
.hk, is that right?
Yeah, www.pprs.hk.
.hk. All right. And if you haven't taken the survey, please do. The questions are kind of dubious, but they do have a lot of good spaces where you can add your own comments in, and that's probably a lot more effective than answering their multiple choice questions. So anyway, and I'll repeat this again at the end, because it is very important. We really do need to get our voices into the government hands here. So, all right. So terrific. Well, so Chan, just kind of a similar question for you about, because you made a case that this really has to be heading somewhere, right? It's not just about the bottles; it's about getting rid of the bottles altogether. And so you're talking about kind of these BYO programs and things like that. How do you envision that working? Is that a deposit or
what program are you saying?
Bring your own bottle.
Bring your own. I don't know how to do that at university. I don't know how to do it for a city.
No, why can't it do it on a city scale? Because I have been bringing my own bottles almost all the time. What bars me from doing that? Nobody.
Nothing stops you from. Yeah. All right. In a sense, I would actually add on another argument there. About 50% of the plastic bottles that come into the market are used for water. Now, water got to be the most easiest product for dispensing. Like, sweet, sticky juices and sodas. There are all kind of issues, vermin, hygiene issues, and you can go on and on. Water is easy. And to get a good water dispensing system up and running in Hong Kong, it got to be done. It's the quickest way. The second thing is, the producers are not against that. They're not making much money on water. It's not the market where they make the money. So we were surprised, because we wanted from day one that reduction was part of the scheme. And we were surprised that we got support from A.S. Watson, Vitasoy, and Coca-Cola on that scheme, because we thought they're making money out of it. Now, there is a cost recovery of water where the volume allows them to recover the cost of their whole machinery. But they're not making a lot of money on it. So for us, that water is very important to get that out of dispensers. And so I love Tencent's suggestion of, let's set a clear target then. And then how do we do that? How do we institutionalize that with government and with the community and with the beverage suppliers? That is going to be delivered on. And then how do we measure that target? To me, that's a very interesting one. And I hope we can develop that idea, because Tencent put it out there. But I think we're going to say, okay, how do we measure that then? How do we make sure we meet those targets? Right. And then where are the levers that we have to adjust? Right?
Well, and I'm a big believer in targets, and Sunshine, you were making the point that this could be ratcheted up over time. You want it to start at some level and then and that's what a target would do. If we're heading towards the target, leave it alone, let it do its own thing. But if we're missing the mark, what the lever to twist to try to ratchet up that's important. Benjamin, I just wanted to ask you a question about how we might discuss this in a different way, because you're very honest about, this is going to be a little painful. It's not, which is a very hard argument to make. I always thought, though, it might be a better way to discuss these things is to say, would you be willing to pay 5 cents, 10 cents, 50 cents, whatever that is, to help ensure that fewer of these bottles end up on the beach? Because that's what we're really paying. Is it really worth a 10-cent discount on your bottle in exchange for more bottles on the beach, or not? So Are we just kind of, we've had this, I remember there was a discussion about wind turbines. Oh, would you pay more for a wind turbine? Well, who knows what a wind turbine will do, but would you be willing to pay an extra, 5% for cleaner air? Well, yeah, of course I would.
Yeah.
So,
look, I see it like this. When I teach my students, a lot of them in sustainability class or in circular economy class, they would say, well, this looks very dire. And it's very difficult to argue with that, right? Because they're not wrong. So from my perspective, I'm so sorry, I'm not forcing anybody to do something. I'm just asking you to think about the next generation. It's not about you, it's about the next generation. So yes, you have to have a price. On the flip side, and there's a lot of good news coming. I mean, your example is wonderful, right? Producers suddenly being willing to join you and say, yes, why not reduction? Why not? Today is something happening. So what I want to put forward is that the extended producer responsibility scheme, or we call it in Europe like this, because we have this organizational component. That means producers are also responsible for organization, as you said. No, don't shift it to the government. They have to do it. Now, there is a lot of opportunity. Why? There's this hypothesis, we call it the Porter hypothesis, that any kind of regulation might trigger some sort of innovation. Right? There's nothing specific there. Check this with evidence, okay? Now, if you think about producer responsibility scheme in Hong Kong, that suddenly you pay more, but imagine that you include, for example, as Chung Chang-san has mentioned, the informal actors, right? Those waste grannies, imagine you have more of those cleaners actually having a better opportunity to work, right? Do something additional. So you integrate people and don't sell it. So it's quite a bit of marketing. Don't sell it as an obligation where you have to pay. Sell it as where you pay to enhance other people's opportunities and the environment as well. See, it is always. Why does this need to be so stressed, and why do we need such a hard impact in this discussion? Well, we are all sort of resilient to change, right? If you have it cozy in the current state, then you're not willing to say, well, I don't want to make big adjustments, right? Because you're used to this particular mode of living, the mode of how the economy runs. But the problem with us is we have, everyone, right? We have difficulties to project how the future is going to be, even if we know that what we create is wasted time. But you have to internalize mentally, you have to do some training and think about, if we continue like this, it's going to be really problematic. I can tell you I've had the pleasure of joining one of those beach cleanup activities, and I should do more. It is not nice. It is simply not nice. It is to some extent dangerous. It is unpleasant. And the worst thing is that it doesn't seem to get less. You go to 1 week. I have not experienced this, unfortunately. But from what I've heard and from the documentation and what I personally experienced, you go to 1 week, it's a lovely beach. You come the next week, the beach is again filled up with plastic or waste, whatever. So do we have to climb so hard? No. But maybe, first instance, be tough, be hard, so that people get a bit, depressed. And then, in second instance, tell them, well, there's actually something to make out of it. Mm-hmm. I think this is something, as also Professor Chung Chang mentioned in the last slide, right? We have some sort of sustainability dimension. It's not only economics, it's the environment, and we have the social dimension. So there is a way to go for.
Well, and that leads to another question that I wanted to ask. Actually, one of the people online had brought up the face masks, and it just is a reminder that we tend to solve one problem while we're creating another problem. And we're watching this in real life. This is, you could, if you're a student, pay attention to this moment, because what you're hearing is we've got a pandemic. We have to do everything we can to address that. And if we create more waste, then we do all kinds of bad things to the environment. We'll deal with that later. And this is what an environmental catastrophe looks like in real time. We're watching it happen. And from a sustainability point of view, you can't accept that. You have to say you can't create another problem. But the issue that we have here is that we've got lots and lots of waste, not just face masks, and it's not just the bottles, but it's a lot of things that don't fit into the machines. It's the Tetra Packs. But it's also, coffee cups. It's also the takeaway containers. It's the subway wrappings. There's no place for all of those. So I guess the question for you three is, if this goes forward with a focus on beverage containers, does this start to distract us from the other big issues, the bigger issue, which is we've got a wasteful economy. If we just reward companies for coming up with something that passes a lot of waste on to the consumer, and then, of course, it's your burden to figure out what to do with it. And we're addressing one piece of it, but we're not looking at the bigger picture.
Well, that's really what I fear. As I have mentioned, that already we see conflicts between the two, back to back. Well, back to back is lag time of more than 5 years of PRS. I mean, on one hand, if how is that 75 cents per glass bottles be convincing, and while for plastic is 10 cents? I mean, I cannot piece the two together. What kind of governance or environmental management plan does the government have? All right, and talk about think of the plastic bag levy. Although it does, the levy does reduce the amount of plastic bag carrier bags that is consumed, but it is not entirely so effective after several years. You see the figures, and already the Environment Bureau has admitted that, and that's why they have to review the levy level. But a lot of people, when you ask them, what are you doing for the environment? They say, I bring my own bag. That's it. But when they are offered with a paper bag, linen bag, some kind of bags that is not plastic, that does not look like plastic, they accept it happily. This is not what we want. It is entirely against the original purpose.
Well, and so that's the question. So you're kind of tipping on something called moral licensing. You know, if I go to the gym this morning, then maybe I'll have an extra scoop of ice cream to reward myself, right? And we see that in environment too. Well, I dropped something in the recycling bin, so now I'm going to, now I don't feel so bad about leaving that plastic bag on the countertop. And so I guess that's the question: Are we distracting ourselves? Are we kind of patting ourselves on the back and say, I just put that into the reverse vending machine, so now I'm going to go, buy a 3-piece meal from Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Well, that's a real problem here. So it's kind of a very simplistic thing where you can go, okay, the bottles is an obvious one, and then people put it in an RVM, and then the bottle comes back, and I won. And so government here is being very, and government has been happy with our organization because it allowed them to go ahead, but they haven't gone ahead with municipal waste charging.
Right.
They haven't gone ahead with reviewing the plastic bag. So they are not reviewing whether it's difficult. We have made it easy for them to do something about plastic bottles. But then if we are going to do the plastic bottles, we got to be very clear on that this must be a gate, or it must be a pathway for all plastics. The scheme should not be designed just to be for plastic bottles to go around and I ignore the rest. And that, to me, is the very big danger of an RVM-focused, high deposit rate, RVM-focused solution. And what we need to develop a capacity for in Hong Kong, starting off with the plastic bottles, is an all-plastic, really good recovery mechanism and incentive for the community to participate, which ultimately comes down to local sorting facilities where materials come in, get sorted out, and that might not be in your kitchen because our kitchen is so small, and it might not be on the floor of the building because the building wasn't designed for it 30 years ago, but we'll have to find that space in the community to do it. So it must be a pathway. And then the second thing is when it comes to these kind of strategies, when we were doing the beach cleaning, and we did the analysis of what was there, beverage packaging was significant. The second thing that was significant was the styrofoam lunch boxes, fast food. And the third one is the styrofoam fish and vegetable trays. It's so hard to address it all at once, but it is much easier if you deal with the items individually. So the styrofoam fish and vegetable box is a regional trade issue, and you need to address it there. Europe is doing that and we need to have that done in Asia, and it's got to be addressed at that level. You cannot, as Hong Kong, stand on its own and resolve your styrofoam boxes. But when it comes to your styrofoam lunch boxes, that's easily resolved. Government says January 1, 2023, no more styrofoam lunch box in Hong Kong, full stop. Very simple. And then the solutions will be there, because there are solutions, but they are more expensive. They are more expensive. But you just got to, for that one, the strategy got to be very simple. You just announce that that's it. Now, we have not been very good at that and taking radical action on government side on this thing. But I think you need to identify these individual products and figure out what's the right strategy, each of them. But you cannot, as you say, sit on your laurels and say, oh, I've licked the bottles, now I can not do something else. You know, I'm done. That would be very, very dangerous.
Right. And I just want to add on, like, why do we focus on one type of stream or fraction now, right? And why don't we extend it to every single fraction?
Because this stream is 5% of plastics.
True.
So, okay, so it's not that big.
No, that's absolutely. So my point is, like, when I study systems or do my analysis, I think about, okay, how do systems change, right? How there's a reform, a revolution, whatever transformation you want to call it. How does it proceed? Well, actually, it's an incremental process, right? Step by step, heuristically, gradually. So what is that thing that actually changes us? So I call it institutions, that rules as set forth by the government, or is it patterns of behavior, routine, right? Now, how to arrive at such change, if it should be directed, right? We need to learn, right? We need to learn every step. So that means if I don't say I disagree with you, I wouldn't say I disagree with the government, but I also don't agree with them. But it could be interesting if the government is now implementing this at the first instance, does it quickly, collects the information, collects the data, observes how it works, and then expands it on the basis of what we have learned. So it's a heuristic trial and error process. The same is true for people, right? For the society.
Sure. If it's intended for that purpose, if that was is the strategy behind it, perfectly fine. But then they have to say so.
True, I agree with you, absolutely. No question, absolutely. I do agree. The thing now again with people is that they get used to return something, get used to return the product. However, are we on the right track? So I want to come back to this one slide where I said, if we train people to recycle, well, then we might end up at this terrible loop. It's not a circular economy loop. But the people say, oh, well, it gets recycled. Right? I get my deposit back, my refund, and I can continue consuming. So what do we need in parallel is alternative systems. As you say, we have to forbid certain things. The polystyrene boxes where we'll fish, is cool. This has to be, this has to go. The second thing is plastic bags. I'm sorry, really? No, absolutely not. Not to that extent. No. In that regard, we have to have regulation to prohibit, as you also said, well, there's certain contents in PET bottles, Professor Trump, right? They should be they should be prohibited. Is that easy to do? No. Does it need effort? Yes. Can it be done at the moment? I would say no. Yes. Right. That goes in a different constellation. Should be a good chance, maybe. Finally, I just want to say one more thing. In order to do that, I think we all have to educate ourselves a bit more. I challenge you to treat it that way. Making a bit of commercial for you. I see what you guys do. You start. Everybody. Those people who are sensitive, they read it, understand it. My wife comes from a very different field of discipline. She reads it, and she understands it, and she learns what this is fascinating. So this is the way to go forward, right? Inform your peers. Also practice things. I always recycle my plastics and metals, try to consume less. I hope somebody's watching me and then imitating me. I think this could be a way forward.
Well, I do too. So here, and actually, a couple of people have voiced some things. One was asking about, with a bottle, do you have to train people to pour the water out before? A lot of the education tends to be on the consumer side. And I remember having a conversation years ago with someone who was saying, if you have a pizza box and if the cheese drips onto the box, you can't recycle it. So we need to educate all the consumers that, if you see all this grease on the box, don't put it in the recycling stream because it really kind of ruins the badge. My feeling was, we're educating the wrong person. Why don't we go to the pizza owner and say, as soon as you put your drippy pizza in that box, you've ruined it. Right? You're the person who needs the education, not the consumer, because by the time it gets to them, there's nothing they can do. They didn't ruin the box. And So how much of this education goes further upstream? To say, just like you're saying, I like the idea of sending these pictures back to Swire and saying, this is your bottle. Here's where I found it. You want to come get it, or should I bring it back to you? This is your. I think that's a great way, because this education has to go upstream and downstream, and I think that all of the effort tends to be on the poor person at the very end of the line. And don't forget, everybody makes money except the end consumer. The manufacturer, the seller, the retailer, wholesaler, designer, everybody's making their money. The person who has the biggest burden, pouring out the bottle, washing it out, making sure you walk 3 blocks to find an empty recycling bin, those guys are not getting anything. So, how does the education, or maybe, I don't know if it's called education, maybe it's regulation, maybe it's a combination of both. How do we get it back upstream?
Well, if you want me to take a stab at that, so what we're finding as we are now trying to implement these systems, one of the strategies is we want to ask people keep your packaging separate. And so for that, we have first of all gone to those people who own or control facilities, the residential estate, the shopping mall, the commercial building, the university, and ask them to enable people to keep it separate. And our first obstacle that we found, even among participants in our own group, is that it's very difficult to get them to place an extra bin. And so that very first hurdle is right there, and making sure that you have to enable people. If you don't make it easy for people to participate, and keep it separate by making sure there is a bin, then how are they going to do it? They're not going to be motivated. So taking it back to the industry, taking it back to property managers, right now is all very simple, making sure that there are places where people can drop. And if you're making that very complicated and very expensive, then you're kind of penalizing the consumer. You say, we're going to put a very high deposit on it, and you have to go walk quite a bit to get your money back, so you definitely will return it. But then you do, as you suggest, you then penalize the consumer. You lay the pain with them, and you put a minimum amount of equipment where they can return it that are expensive to maintain. So we'll have to turn that around. And that facilitation, enabling, and initiation, it takes time. We have this lovely neighborhood scheme, and Shansan is on it, and we got money from government to test it out. But the uptick, so they're kind of trying to push it up the hill, takes time for people to start recognizing it and stepping into it. So, and that I think is where we need the industry and the participation from property owners and property managers and cleaning companies to really help out and participate in this before we really push it on the consumer.
Yeah. All right, we still have a little bit of time, but I think there's one issue that all of you have talked about, and I think we should come back to that, and that's the levy, right? So, and I see in the comments, clearly there's a difference of opinion. You pointed that out. There's some people who say 5 cents, that's way too small. I mean, it should be 50 cents, it should be $1, it should be $10. Shan, you said it has to be strong enough that there's a pain point. It has to hit that threshold.
I actually it's not supporting any system, but I would like to use 2 criteria to measure the success of such a system. So as long as it can induce high return rate, that is collection efficient, and it is low enough in cost effective. Cost effective is very important because nowadays we are seeing ever increasing government budget. So I don't really want taxpayers' money to go on that. I would rather have it to be at the same time cost effective and environmentally effective. But in my slides, I actually offer an alternative other than penalizing the producer, right? Having a very high deposit, and at the same time, you may also say you are penalizing the consumer because I have to pay the deposit upfront before I can get the refund, and because it's so expensive, I can either give up consumption or I have to sacrifice my refund. But on the other hand, even the current government system, I think if we give enough, they are willing to modify it in a way that I have mentioned, I think it's still is a good system to use. However, I think the scope must be extended. Okay, so your approach would be, start where we can manage it, where we know where things are, then we slowly go up and down if we need it, right? Well, not too slow. No. I support Paul's approach that we impose our targets. All right, the targets is eventually what we want to achieve, right? And then we enforce it. Please enforce it. Yeah. Okay. So, but one more thing that Paul was mentioning, which I think really is an issue, is that there are some potential unintended consequences, right? You end up putting some incentives in places where maybe we didn't expect. Cleaning companies are now charging, trying to encourage their cleaners. Cleaners are sticking them into their bags to bring home. They're taking them, there's, as you mentioned, there's leakage. I guess economists would call that leakage. Let's say some bottles that are coming from across the border, they want their money as well, people coming in with big bags. So there are some unintended consequences. The bigger the number, the more likely some of these things will happen. How do we deal with that?
Well, it's really nice to see the concurrency also with the proposal from Shansan in terms of ratcheting up 75%, 90%, 90%, 95%, setting these growing targets to achieve. To me, I agree with that. I mean, and you can say that we pace it over 3 years, 5 years. That's a debate you can have about what's the speed of implementation that needs to be achieved. But setting the target is far more important than setting the money, and to then agree on how then you achieve that target in terms of what are the different factors that are going to impact your success. And part of that is convenience and the ability for people. You've got to enable them. If the systems is not there, what you want to do, you've got to modulate the pricing much higher. So, and we got to push on all cylinders. And I think we can do that if everybody works together on that. I'm very keen on this discussion about the money that everybody it's so easy, so emotional to get onto. 5 years ago, when we were discussing and we had these plastic bottles on the beach, we were all saying $1 a bottle. It sells well. It's so easy to communicate. Let's do $1 a bottle. And when I was asked to be chairman of the group, that was exactly that I ended in. That was my first thing, $1 a bottle. And over the last 3-4 years, as we're really looking into details of implementation, $1 a bottle will make it really expensive, difficult to implement. Whereas, we're having a lovely scheme, a neighborhood scheme, where we take this value of the bottle that is at the factory about 3 cents, but we're now paying 5 cents in the street. So that takes in all the logistics. The volume starts to grow, and we see where it comes from. We're learning quickly. And so I think we need to give ourselves that opportunity for learning, ratcheting up then and modulate that recycling fee and the rebate level as required to meet the target. But let's just agree the target. Let us say by 2025, 70% in the box, and by 2030, 95% in the box or something like that. And just lay that down as the track and then put it on the responsibility of the producers to be organized and to drive that, to make sure that the systems are in place and so on, and that the community can grow into making it happen. I think that is the best way forward. So you learn, so therefore you don't waste. I mean, with companies, if you just slam it on straight up, you have a lot of wastage because your idea is not right. If you step by step grow and learn and adjust, then you're going to have much more efficient, much more sensitive to the local circumstances, and you're going to have greater effectiveness.
So just to play devil's advocate, $1 a bottle. Why not have $1 a bottle for every bottle that you find outside not in a recycling bin or in a trash can. Every bottle that you find on the beach is a $1 fine or wire or right.
Well, I think it's the enforcement. It's difficult to enforce.
The bottles that you find.
Yeah. No.
Someone will pay a check.
No, so we've had exactly this discussion. Are you going to put a waste tax on the producers? So for as far as it is not collected and recovered, because you know the sales numbers because they had to register.
Yeah.
So do you then penalize them for the percentage of production that has not been recovered? And therefore you get a waste charge.
That's right.
So those are the kind of ways you can consider when you fine tune the implementation of how you charge the levy, what ways you calculate that, and those mechanisms.
That would really put the responsibility on the producer. Then all of those times where there's not a bin, people can't afford a bin. They'll buy a bin for you, right? Because they want your stuff to get in.
So I'm not sure we can measure it by the person who picks the bottle from the beach. I think we can measure it by X amount of bottles we put in the market, X amount has been recovered, X amount is lost.
Right.
You're going to be having to pay a waste charge for that. So I think there are ways of dealing with in the way you set your levies and the way you're calculating that.
All right. Okay, I think we're just about out of time. 4 minutes. All right, so we have 4 minutes. Why don't I just maybe give the three of you maybe just a minute apiece to what's the big point that you want everyone to remember? What's your tagline? 1 minute or less.
Right now, it's all in. From my perspective, the government basically says do plastic bottles because that's easy, and don't do liquid cartons because there's no recycling for it. Don't do pouches because it is not recyclable. That's just that's perverse. I don't do pouches because there's no recycling. Excuse me. Pouches should be in, and don't make it easier to put things in a pouch. And lower cost in the market, and therefore you promote that as a packaging format. So all in, and I think this is something that people really have to push really hard because plastic bottles is easy. We got RVMs, you just call Tom Rock. It's just so we have to think of it as all in. That to me would be the big message. Right. You want to go first?
To me, I think the major message is don't put the cart before the horse. Ask us what we want. Why are we controlling plastic beverage bottles to start with? Not that we want all plastic beverage bottles to get recycled, but we want to have a low waste, low carbon society. And at the end, maybe even achieving Benjamin's goal of a circular economy. So whatever policy controls that we are going to use or support, it must answer the very beginning objectives. All right. So I think this is the main story, but I would like to supplement because just now I was running too fast with going through my PowerPoints, and I forgot to mention that for recycled plastics, because it has been recycled once or twice, usually the additives and some of the compounds in constituting the plastics can come out more easily than virgin plastics. That's why including the closing the loop theoretically is good, but we need to set up standards and make sure that the manufacturing technology can keep up with this.
Okay, right. Yeah, right. I get the point is that recycling is actually downcycling, right? So,
yeah.
All right. Benjamin,
my last point would be just we have to be open to try something new. That means we have to allow ourselves and also the government and systems to learn. It's like try something new, try to shift maybe your consumption a bit. See how you feel with it. The government, we see it now. This is limited, the EPR or the PRO, PRS. But let's see what they learn from it. Let's see maybe they modify about the levy, right? We can try the low one and see, because you make your survey, right? You figure out in a certain district, 5%. Let's see how it works for other districts. With time we can adjust this. There's nothing to be carved in stone. The very last thing is I want to mention is on the circular economy. If you look for something different in terms of consumption, not only plastic, but also, you need a car, you need to buy it, you need to share it. There are a lot of small and medium enterprises in Hong Kong, 5 to maximum 25 people organizing it They've come up with a lot of innovative ideas, everyday products, right? Serving, providing services for weddings and such. You don't have to buy the clothes, you can actually really rent it, right? A lot of rental ideas, a lot of alternative materials. And the people do it here. So be a bit, try to experiment. Try to find something.
All right. That's a good way to end. Don't be afraid to try something new. All in. I like that too. That's a good catchy thing, and I think absolutely right. And then, Shan, don't put the cart in front of the horse. Focus on low waste, low carbon society. That really is. It's basically look at the Look at the end goal. What are we trying to achieve, and don't get distracted by all the things in the way. Right. All right, everyone who is on. Let me just remind you one more time. www.pprs.hk. Go to that site. It's very quick. Like I said, the multiple choice questions are already kind of pre-programmed. You'll give them what they want to hear. But the real key is add your comments. Your comments are the most important. You could say, I think that your questions are terrible, but here's what you really need to be asking. Or, go all in. Don't forget about all this other stuff, or, whatever it is that you say. But please do go. And you said the deadline is...
It's 21 May is the deadline for the public consultation. If you're interested in other Drink Without Waste news, we got a Facebook, Drink Without Waste, and we got a website, drinkwithoutwaste.org. So welcome, send us comments, pester us, make us feel bad, make us feel good, make us think hard. Thank you very much.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks all our panelists. This was a great discussion. I really enjoyed it. Thanks everybody who logged in, and I guess we're done.